Fear. Fear of the dark. Fear of heights. Fear of public speaking. Fear of spiders. Fear is part of what makes us human. Well, sort of, I guess. Cats are afraid of cucumbers, I guess. Elephants are afraid of mice. Fear is something that is part of the human experience. You wouldn't be a human if you weren't afraid of something. Now, you could go online and look up the most common fears that people have. And usually it's things like I said, public speaking, which I'm not a huge fan of, but after teaching, I'm okay with it. Heights. Used to hate them, but sort of got over it. I'll explain how. It's a fun story. Spiders. Once you touch them, you're not really afraid of them anymore. Cockroaches. Can't deal with those still. Hate them. There's lots of other ones. There's weird things. There's clowns. There's being alone. There's social anxiety, the opposite of being alone. There's all sorts of things that make people afraid and make people function less optimally than they should, less well than they should, which makes you wonder, why would people feel fear in the first place? Why is that an evolutionary response if it makes us less able to react to circumstances? Now, some of them make sense. Spiders, scorpions. It's good that we're afraid of them. That way we don't touch them because they are dangerous. Some of them. Zombies and bodies and stuff. That's actually a response called the uncanny valley, where if something looks human but not quite human, we are afraid of it. We want to stay away. Why is that a good thing? Well, because when people have a virulent, transmissible disease, they often will look not quite human. And it's good that we stay away from them out of fear, because otherwise we might catch that disease. I recently had an eye infection, and it's more or less gone away now. I just have dark circles, but briefly my eyes were like bright red and full of tears, and I looked like an absolute demon. And that was not a transmissible one, fortunately, but if someone did have a disease like Ebola, for example, a lot of things on their face will change and they will not look fully human, and people will stay away from them, which is good to avoid outbreaks of disease. Now, a lot of people are afraid of heights, which it makes sense. Our bones are not designed to take sort of snapping forces, like you fall 5 feet, catch your ankle and something, and sort of bend your leg sideways. And if you are living out in the Serengeti or wherever people evolved in, if you break your leg, you're sort of useless for a long time, and you might just straight up die if you don't have good medicines and treatment out there. So, fear of heights makes sense. But another one is fear of public speaking. Now, I'm sure there are lots of theories about that, but I have one of my own. I may have read it in a book somewhere, but I think I came up with it myself. It is that since people sort of evolved living in small tribal groups with not more than 300 or 400 people, the only time you would be talking in front of hundreds of people is if you were running to be chief of the tribe, or if the tribe was having a vote on whether or not to exile you, or to sort of de-elect you as chief of the tribe. And those situations, what you say is going to result in your life or your death. So it would make sense for you to be nervous talking in front of lots of people. Of course, now that response is not optimal. Talking in front of 20 people in a business meeting is not going to result in your life or death. But your nervousness might result in you not getting that raise you want, or not making the impressions you want. So that is now a bad response. Roaches are a big one. I've never met anyone, except for my dad, who used to have roach races in his frat in college. I've never met anyone except for him who likes cockroaches or is willing to handle them. That is one of the few things I'm still afraid of. Sort of. I could deal with them. I could hit them. I could crush them. I cannot pick them up with my bare hands. I do not want to step on them with my bare feet. I've eaten plenty of things that most people don't eat, but I would not want to eat a fried cockroach. There was that old show, Fear Factor. And there was always that one challenge where they make people eat a live cockroach or something. And that, anything but that. I'd climb a cliff with no ropes rather than do that. Clowns is a sort of fun one. I assume that's related to the uncanny valley effect, where if something looks almost human but not quite, we are afraid of it. It helps us avoid diseases and recently dead bodies that could, give diseases. But now that's just another response, like public speaking, where, that's why people used to wear war paint going into battle to make the enemies afraid, so you make them look human but not quite. But there's a good story I have, going to school in Gainesville, living in Florida, about clowns. Because when I was going to school here, there was a brief, maybe a few months up to a year period, where people were getting attacked by clowns here in Florida. And it wasn't just one Daily Mail sort of fake news agency. I say fake news meaning like tabloids, not like politicized fake news. But it wasn't like some fake news agency reported this and everyone believed it. These were multiple documented attacks. People were dressed as clowns, luring kids into the woods. People were running up to people's cars dressed as clowns and banging on their windows. There was a really great story where someone did that to a driver, and the driver got out and knocked him out, then backed over them, which is, you get what you give, I guess. If you pull a gun in a crowded square and someone shoots you, it's your fault. If you attack someone's car dressed as a clown and they back over you, they shouldn't be going to jail for that. And the last one I saw brought up was fear of the dark, which I think everyone starts with that fear. I guess it's a useful one because there be monsters at night, big cats and hyenas and all sorts of scary things. And we can't see well in the dark. Lots of animals can, but humans can't, which is, I think, an oversight on evolution's part. It would have been really cool to be able to see things in the dark. You make going into caves a lot more fun. You wouldn't have to bring 20 light sources with you. But that fear is a bit outdated now. Yes, there's more crime that happens at night because I guess just scumbags come out at night and they're less likely to be police officers. But when you wake up at night and you look over at your chair and there's a shirt draped over it and it looks like a demon, that is a maladaptive response. That is not good for your functioning. But it's not just people who have fears that have sort of evolved past their usefulness or not evolved and are no longer useful. I said earlier, cats, they're afraid of cucumbers. If you have never seen this, look up the video compilation. People just place a cucumber behind their cat while it's eating, and when the cat turns around and sees it, they go flying across the room. They will launch themselves bodily through the air and land 10 feet away. It is insane. Why are they afraid of cucumbers? Duh, it looks like a snake. And snakes are venomous and one of the things that could very easily kill a cat if they take a single bite from it. Although, conversely, you can also find videos of cats killing snakes if they get to jump on them. But a lot of things, our fears, are things that are no longer useful but were in the past. And part of being human, I think, is learning to overcome those fears that are no longer useful, and even learning to confront and deal with those fears that are still useful, like heights and certain bugs like spiders or wasps. So that's something I did. When I first went to college, aside from gaining 40 pounds of mostly muscle in my first year, I was trying to make myself into a better, more functional person. So I said, immersion therapy. I'm going to face any fear I still have, which at that time was bugs, the dark, heights. I'm going to get over it. And I did. There's some really sort of fun ways, I guess. So my dorm where I lived was right in front of the woods. And they were some sort of creepy woods. It was swampy. There's standing water everywhere. There are owls that live out there. If you've never heard an owl hooting at night, it sort of sounds like a wolf howling. When they fly over you, it's oh, holy shit, where's that? But I used to go out hiking at night by myself, or running sometimes. I'll go out to the woods. I have a hammock set up sometimes, or I just sit on a log. I'd force myself to be like, okay, I'm not using a flashlight. It's dark. Every animal the size of a squirrel going by makes enough noise that it sounds like there's a person or a bear walking towards you. So at first I would just take a hammer with me. I had a hammer for DIY stuff. I would just carry it with me out in the woods. Eventually I didn't need to take anything. I was completely comfortable out there. Like, I knew logically in my head the biggest animal out here is maybe a coyote. We thought they were out there. We never found any. Probably an owl or a fox is the biggest animal out there. There's nothing dangerous to people. But you hear those loud noises and you're in the dark. Your eyes can't see well. You know other things can see better. And you're afraid until your brain comes to terms with it. It just takes a bit of time. And now, I mean, when I was overseas, my favorite time to explore places was at night. Mostly because I was in hot countries where it is blistering hot during the day. But I walked through a lot of areas at night that a lot of people would not want to go into without, like, a firearm. Come across, like, angry barking dogs that are just wild street dogs. Going through areas that, slum is a bad word. The people I meet in the poor areas are the nicest people. But I went through some areas that had, like, decrepit, like, corrugated tin housing and like literal dumpster fires going. And I never had any trouble with people at night. I got stalked through Bali by a ladyboy once, which is what they call themselves over there. No offense intended, but that's its own story. Bugs and spiders was easier. If my video about collections came out already, you'll know how I did that, how I dealt with it. But I did not like bugs, especially spiders and cockroaches. I still don't like cockroaches, but I could sort of handle them. Not physically handle them, but I could kill them and, like, take care of them. I don't like jump or cry or anything if one runs across my foot. But I took 2 classes in entomology, which is the study of insects, and by extension things like spiders and scorpions and millipedes and centipedes. And I got pretty good at handling them. I've had tarantulas crawl up my arm. If I see someone on the street and they're like a science educator and they have a snake or a bug or something, I'll be like, yes, please put it on me. This is cool. Like, I know it's not going to hurt me. If it does, I will survive. And yeah, that's like immersion therapy, like tossing someone who's afraid of spiders into a room full of spiders and they have a panic attack. Then they realize, oh, yeah, these are okay. I'm actually completely safe here. And from that point forward, they're not afraid of bugs. I sort of did that over a longer period of time in classes. But yeah, I guess it's like kicking a kid into the pool to teach him how to swim, but with less child abuse involved. I have to be honest, public speaking is still not my forte. I've gotten used to being on a camera because when I first taught English, it was during COVID time. And for quite a bit of it, it was in front of a screen. And my own picture was unhelpfully, like my own video thumbnail thing was unhelpfully in the top corner next to all the students' ones. And it was distracting as hell to see myself moving whenever I moved. It would have been much easier to teach if I could just, like, blank out that one square. But I got used to it. And when I taught in actual classrooms with students in there, I got used to it. And still, I would not want to give a speech in front of a room full of business people in suits. But I would happily lead a group of 100 people on a tourist trail or a hike through the woods or something with no trouble whatsoever. Public speaking is something I think a lot of people, even when they are, like, for example, the Dalai Lama, the head of a certain religious group, he did tours all around the world. He was in exile because, well, an unnamed country sort of genocided his people. I'm not sure if I could put that in a YouTube video, but let's see. And he used to give a lot of speeches, and he would always say he got nervous, very, very nervous before a speech. And he's probably given hundreds or thousands of speeches. He'd still get nervous. It's just a human response, but you can sort of, like, deal with the symptoms even if you can't get to the root of that problem. Now, the last sort of big fear I had that I had to deal with, and probably the most illegal one was heights. When you're in Florida or in a city, it's hard to legally deal with a fear of heights because it's sort of flat. In college, I would do what people would refer to as roofing, which is you find a building during the day, at night, whenever. You try to get on the roof. Could be a hospital, could be like one of those weird university buildings that's always open at night. You try to get on the roof. Sometimes you toss things off the roof once you're up there. My friends and I tossed a sandbag off like a 7-story roof, and it made the most unsatisfying sound when it hit the ground. It was sort of like a, and that was it. But that didn't help too much. I would still have like a tingling in the back of my thighs whenever I got near a balcony or any high area. So when I was teaching in Borneo, you could get away with a lot more as a foreigner in an area that does not have many foreigners. I spoke the language well enough to be understood, but people would often just assume I did not speak Bahasa Indonesia, and a lot of people did not speak English, even to the ability I could speak Indonesian. Like, they spoke less English than I spoke their language. So people would be a bit awkward, and they would not stop me from doing things that security guards in America would very much stop you from doing. So I made a habit, you could say, of climbing tall things. There were water towers there. Unlike in America, where you have like the retractable ladder, or they need to bring their own 6-foot ladder to reach the hanging one, the ladder just went all the way down. So I climbed up onto the water tower, maybe 150 feet up in the air. And then there's like a further ladder. It would let you climb onto like the bulb of the water tower and sit right near the top hatch, which was sort of terrifying, but fun because you're like sitting at an angle. You're sort of laying back on it. And it's a good thing it wasn't slippery. I got to eat food up there. I got to like stand there and watch the traffic go by, because it was like a big 4-way intersection down on the street. It's fun. Climbing things is fun once you're at the top. There's another one that was like some sort of radio tower. It was at least 300 feet tall. It was huge. Like has like the staircases that wrap around the central column, and you keep going up and up. The stairs are like sort of corroded a bit. They make funny noises as you climb them. At the top, you could see the whole town. I could see mountains that were 50 miles away. It was insane. And it was also right near the biggest mosque in the area. So you got like a great aerial view of that, which was really cool. But in that circumstance, I just been cycling by there on my way to a friend's house, or going back home from teaching or something. And I just sort of went into the compound, asked one of the workers there, can I climb this in Bahasa Indonesian? I forget the thing. I remember I repeated the phrase a lot, saya mau lihat jauh. I want to see far, which is, I'm not even sure if that translates properly, but they sort of understood me, and they said, yes, you could climb it, just don't fall off. And I was up there a couple times, just like standing near the edge of a 300-foot tall tower with a railing that only goes up to like your belly button. That gets you over a fear of heights pretty fast. And without a doubt, the craziest climbing thing I ever did for overcoming my fear of heights, I'd pretty much overcome them by that point, I thought, was after my teaching contract ended, I tried to cycle across Borneo. Not the highways, but like the sort of middle route, which is not really a route. I had to go through lots of weird areas, flooded towns, logging areas. It ended pretty fast. I got robbed in a jungle while I was sleeping. After 2 weeks, I had to go home. But at one point, I climbed a mountain or a hill called Bukit Kalam, or a Gunung Kalam. One word means hill, the other means mountain. It was Kalam. It has its own little wiki page. Apparently, it has some cool pitcher plants growing on it that don't grow anywhere else. I may or may not have slept on top of one of them. But this mountain is like a big piece of limestone. One piece that's all been like eroded down. It looks like a shield volcano, but less wide, I guess. It's weird. It's like one solid piece of rock. And going up the side of this was the most interesting way of climbing it. So rather than having ladders or ropes or anything, it had sort of bent pieces of rebar caulked or glued into the side of the mountain. And they did not wobble at all, but it was just a piece of rebar. Then above that, another piece of rebar. And you step from one to the other. I was barefoot at the time because the rocks were all slippery, and feet are better than shoes at keeping your grip. But I realized afterwards that going up this sort of ladder of rebar on a vertical cliff with nothing below you but just a piece of metal, there was like a safety cable next to it, and I had no safety gear. I realized that I was supposed to be clipped in, so if I fell, I'd only go down 10 feet and not like 70 feet to my death on the rocks. But it was incredibly fun. There was a view of palm plantations. There was a view of everything once you're up there. It was amazing climbing this thing. If you want an idea of it, look up the Via Ferrata in Italy. It is also like a sort of like metal staircase bolted into the side of a vertical mountain, and it looks terrifying if you're afraid of heights. I ended up getting to the top. I took pictures. They're like little platforms that sort of shake around and you're up there, and it's scary. But I got stuck on the mountain later because I couldn't go down there in the dark. It was too much. But from that point onward, I have not been afraid of heights. I still get that tingling in the back of my legs if I stand near a high balcony. Like the sort of call of the void thing, like, what if you jumped? You could do it. No, please, no. Brain, stop. But I'm not really afraid of heights. I think the last real fear I have is still cockroaches. And one day, I'm going to face that too. I told myself once when I was living in Bali during the early stages of COVID, and there were lots of cockroaches in Bali, I told myself, next time you see a cockroach, you're going to face your fear, you're going to step on it and crush it with your bare feet. And the next time after that, you're going to grab it in your hands and crush it. And that never happened. I saw one a few days later. I was like, I'm not doing that. I just stepped out with my shoe. But just the idea of facing your fears is sometimes half the battle. Like, you gotta just sort of like shut your brain off and get started, and you come out a better person, I think. Like, first of all, I function a lot better in situations like heights, public speaking, darkness, animals. And it's not something I ever noticed before because I was one of the crowd that's like, ooh, spiders. But now, or snakes. Ugh. But at my last workplace, which is a nursing home, everyone was all riled up because apparently a snake had been spotted inside it. Nursing home shall remain unnamed, of course. But me and the maintenance guy said, it's just a snake. If you see it, tell us. We'll pick it up and take it outside. And everyone sort of looked at us like we were crazy. I realized, oh, most people are afraid of snakes still, right? So it's sort of like an ability you could gain through a bit of suffering and a bit of fear. But it's worth doing. I think part of the human experience is growing. And yeah, you could do that financially or with experiences, but you could also become a tougher person. You could do things you're afraid of and not be afraid of them anymore. And that is one of the big things in life. Like, I'm a better person than I was a few years ago. It's all because of me doing things that were outside my comfort zone. All right, people. I'll see you again later. And until then, do something you're afraid of. Peace.